At MapRoom, we work with some of the UK's most ambitious businesses, and time again, we see the same things happening. We see great people working hard on quite complex business challenges, but more often than not, they are focused on what's happening inside the business rather than what's going on with their customers and, in some cases, their colleagues. Today, I sit down with Mateus, one of MapRoom's lead service designers, where we ask, what is service design and how does it work in practice? For outcome-focused businesses looking to drive customer growth and reduce cost to serve, service design could be the competitive advantage they are looking for. Mateus, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. You're one of our practitioners. You've worked with MapRoom on a few projects now, and we've loved working with you. I thought it'd be a great opportunity to get to know you more. We're going to talk about service design. That's your specialism. But you do your own intro. Tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and what led you into this kind of field.
Sure. Good to meet you. Good to meet everyone. I'm Mateus. I'm a service designer, as you were saying, working for MapRoom. I'm living in the UK for almost 10 years now. I'm originally from Brazil. And my background is, first of all, in advertising. Then I moved from advertising to UX specifically.
Yeah.
And then when I came to London around 2017, I moved to service design. I came for a master's, and then I just stayed and started working with a number of service design projects in different consultancies and technology companies as well.
Sure. What is it then about, obviously you've got a UX background there, some advertising backgrounds. What is it about service design that, like, did you get into that and think, this is my path now and I love it? Or is it kind of by accident? Because I know, particularly my own career, kind of by accident along the way, but then somehow you find what you love, right?
And it's interesting with service design because you see people in the field that have very different backgrounds, have worked with service designers who were geologists before,
Right.
or have worked with biology, for instance. But in my case, I think it was more of a natural evolution of the role. Back in around 2010, when I started my career, digital was kind of starting.
Yeah.
Social media was in its very beginnings, and I worked mainly with digital advertising. And I saw that digital channels, this new world that was coming, could offer much more to people than what brands were doing with just advertising. That's how I moved to UX, right?
Yeah.
Because with UX, it was all about the experience that companies and brands could offer their customers. And then as a natural next step, brands started becoming services. Even brands that are very product oriented, they started becoming services because of, as I was saying, right, the new touch points, the new digital channels that started appearing. So because of that, my natural next step was to move into service design. So moving from a UX design, which is focused on interfaces and digital products, to looking at the design of the service as a whole, right?
Yeah. And So MapRoom works with some great, ambitious businesses, household name businesses that, typically share one or two of the same pain points. Obviously, there's always uniqueness in every business that you kind of have conversations with and start to engage with. But they do often share, as I say, some commonalities. And I think, for me, the thing I love about service design is that it allows you to take quite a holistic approach to maybe some problems that the businesses are experiencing, but look at the entire system that then delivers, or in some cases isn't quite delivering the experience you want to deliver.
Yeah.
So let's get into service design itself. Let's try and define it. I'm interested to see how you would define service design. So what is it for someone who doesn't really understand it?
Yeah, I really like Lou Dawson's definition, which is the simplest possible, right? Service design is the design of services.
Yeah.
As when you look at graphic design, you're talking about the design of things that are graphic and so on. But I think that the question, it's not that simple because people normally don't know what that means, right? And I think that it's more about understanding why it's necessary now in today's world to design services, because services have become much more complex than they used to be, and they need people thinking about how they are designed, right? Thinking about how the infrastructure, the people, the communications are working in an orchestrated manner
Yeah.
to deliver the experience that they need to deliver. So it's a role of a new world I see, and it's in constant evolution, because it's very much related to how business interact with their customers, how business interact with their employees and colleagues as well, with their different stakeholders. So as communications evolve, as touch points evolve, service design has to evolve as well.
Yeah, completely agree. So my background, slightly different to yours. I started what you might call at the back of the stage, right? So behind the experience layer.
Yeah.
In operations, in process improvements, sort of lean Six Sigma, and at a time when, again, sort of early 2000s, where service-oriented businesses were borrowing tools and techniques and approaches from kind of manufacturing to try and, again, create, that culture of continuous improvement. And again, I think that's one of the builds on top of that now that I love and that our customers love about service design, because it's not just about what's happening back of stage and how efficient our internal processes are, which is often where businesses put a lot of their effort. And then separately, it's also about that experience layer. But fundamentally, how do the two interact, and how is your back office set up to power that experience on the front end?
Exactly.
But fundamentally, again, it's not about a one-off project. It's true continuous improvement. Is that kind of your experience as well?
Definitely. And I see that different roles have been converging with time, right?
Yeah.
So I think that different people have approached similar business problems, or different roles have been approaching innovation and new technology in different ways because of their background. And I feel like things are converging now. So you have design, for instance, right? And design had its own approach to innovation or to how to deal with new channels and customer experience. You also have change management, which had to bring its own approach. You have technology. You have different fields that looked at how to approach this. And service design, I see in a way, it's and I like this word of being an orchestrator, of trying and bringing these different perspectives together.
Yeah.
I really like, and I'll get to your point of continuous improvement, but just in order to get there, I think there's a good framework from Bill Mogridge's, which is from IDEO, which is at the beginnings of design thinking. And it's very much about finding the sweet spot for innovation. And I think that service design sits right there, right? Which is in the middle of humans or people, right? Which is like this desirability element. Technology, right? Or feasibility, how an experience can be feasible. And the business, right? How it can be viable. And of course, in order to find the sweet spot, you need to get people with different backgrounds to interact and to work together, right? And I think this is a very good moment for that, and that's where service design emerges. And when it comes to continuous improvement, you need to get those views together so you can orchestrate that in a lean way, right? So and in that way, service design becomes quite strategic to bring the different perspectives and mindsets together in a transformation project, for instance.
I think that's it's sometimes a harder challenge to orchestrate in itself, because obviously organizations are quite traditionally set up in their own kind of siloed way, quite rightly. Those silos need to exist. But then cutting across those silos to take a kind of journey-led, a customer-led, or in some scenarios we'll talk about the kind of the internal customers, colleagues. It's quite a difficult thing to achieve, and I think a business has to be quite serious about, their outcome and understand that we can't continue to adopt kind of an inside-out mindset. We have to have an outside-in mindset, and that that absolutely demands that you bring together the right skill sets, regardless of where they exist within the business, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that this is talking about those three elements, right? So people, technology, and business. When you come from a design background, you tend to start from people, right?
Yeah.
What people need, what people expect, what their motivations are,
Yeah.
and this is the basis of human-centered design, right? So, as a service designer, that's the perspective that I always try to bring to the table,
Yeah.
and it's a useful way of, as you were saying, right? Many business have their silos. They have the teams that sometimes don't communicate with each other as they could or as they should. But these tools are a way of putting these teams together. So service design is also about facilitating communication between business areas. When you start talking about who your customer is, what are the needs of your customer, you start putting different parts of the business to think about the same things and to look at the same direction. So yeah, I think that's a big benefit of service design.
What would you say are kind of some of the common starting points that then is the kind of perfect starting point for someone like yourself to come in and run a service design led project? What are the kind of either problems, if we think about the problem led approach, or maybe the outcome led side as well? What are the kind of key outcomes that businesses are looking to improve, reduce, solve for, that then lends itself to this kind of thing?
Yeah,
what are the core challenges, would you say, that businesses tend to see that then you go, hang on, this could be a really good use case for this type of approach?
Yeah, I think service design sits in a very strategic level, right? And then, of course, it's our job to understand how this then cascades down to tactics and the operation itself. So starting from strategic goals and the problems that the business has with its business goals, right?
Yeah.
It's the best place to start from. Starting from challenges, right? Starting from problems, and it can be big business challenges, right? And we tend to look at them from a different perspective, right? That's the design problem solving approach, right? Which takes then business through different phases of the design thinking process to then find a solution for a specific problem. And this can be many things, right? So it can be around your customer's relationship. It can be it might be that you're losing customers. It can be that you're not able to approach a specific type of customer that you would like to. But it can also be internal, right? Because there are customers of different types of business that are internal. We're talking about colleagues that are providing the customer experience or that are part of operations that need to, in some way, be a customer of each of the business as well, right? So when we talk about services that a business provides to their colleagues, there are many types of services. There is technology, right? There is development, right? There is learning. There is facilities and many other types of services that business need to offer to the colleagues, and they need to think about it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because I think the way we think about brands has changed over time. I think now, in the same way that customers want to be kind of identify themselves and be associated with certain brands, I believe it's the same for employees as well, right? Who wants to work for a specific type of company? What are the reasons for that? What's the pull factor? And I think when you adopt that kind of experience lens over your colleague journeys as well, well, then you get to be in the driving seat from that point of view as well. Who do I want to attract? What's the value proposition for my employees as well as my customers? And I think when you take that mindset, well, you get to design it. It's not by chance. You get to design everything that your business is and what it says from a brand point of view as well. And I think we can touch on some examples of kind of projects we've done in the customer space or that was led by the customer side, but also the colleague side as well. We'll get to that in a minute.
Sure.
I guess we've sort of touched on where your experience came from and how the rise of digital in the kind of earlier 2000s led you to your kind of career path in service design. Given where we are now, right, in today's kind of economic climate and so on, why is service design still so important for a business of today, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's not about why it's still so important. It's why it's becoming more and more important over time, right? So as I was saying, it's a new type of role that has been evolving in the last 10 years or so, but it's becoming more and more strategic, exactly because the world is so volatile today, right? Things change really fast from a day to the other, and the business needs to understand how to adapt and how to think about the experiences it's providing in order to change and in order to transform and in order to innovate. So service design is, again, connecting these three dots, right? Which is what people need, what technology can offer, and what the business needs in terms of, the business viability. Connecting these three dots it's very important to innovate and to transform. And I think that's why service design becomes so important, right?
I think at the beginning of my career as well, it certainly felt like at the time, I'm sure others might disagree with this, but for me as a kind of young process improvement kind of analyst and so on, getting involved in bigger change projects, it felt like the kind of waterfall approach of a project or a program of work is set up, you deliver it, and then there's a moment of kind of enjoying the benefits. Whereas the world that we're now seeing and describing is that change is the constant. It's never ending. Like you say, the environment within which a business operates is ever changing. There's always new startups trying to grab your customers. There are always new technologies. And therefore, again, pointing back to the requirement to have continuous improvement, truly always on. Change never really ends, does it? But it does demand that you are listening and you are taking that external view in. And obviously that's where service design plays. But just give us a bit of a flavour for what that actually means. So from an approach point of view, what does service design kind of look like in terms of an approach? Where do you start? Like, what's the starting point for a good service design kind of piece of work?
Yeah, so it starts with research, of course, right? As most of the or all of the design process starts from, it needs to start from solid research or data and the understanding of who your customers are. When we talk about people, who are they, right?
Yeah.
And it's there's a very classic process map by the Design Council that is called Double Diamond, right?
Yeah.
Which starts with like opening, right? So it starts with discovery, and it can start from a question or it can start from a problem that you're trying to solve. And then that's a moment where you open, where you start looking at, okay, let's try and understand the reasons behind this, right? Let's try and understand a bit more about this problem. Who are the people that this is affecting?
Yeah.
What is the business? What is the context that this is set in? Again, what technology is available? So that's a moment where you open. And then the next thing is to start converging, which is called define, right? It's a 4D approach, and that's the second D when you go from discovery to defining, which is, right, now that we have seen it all, let's start converging and finding exactly what the problem is. Let's find and solve the right thing, right? So this first part of the diamond is very much about solving the right thing, trying and understanding what is the right problem that we need to solve. And that's the moment when you start opening again, because once you understand the problem well and you know where to go, you can then start building the right thing, which is the development stage, right, in which you can open and start having ideas, start having solutions, and of course thinking about the service design process. This is a very important moment for you to involve different parts of the business, different types of roles of this different perspectives, right? Because if you get people from customer service, or if you get people from technology, they will have different perspectives that that will complement themselves for a solution, right? And then the last thing you do, right, when after you have the ideas, when you're opening again and looking at all the possibilities, the last thing you do is then to converge again and deliver. So that's the last D, right? When you prioritize and you understand what are the things that need to be developed, and that's when you deliver. Normally, that's where design would end, or where service design would end. But as you were saying, that's not the case anymore, right? That's just the start of the process, which becomes cyclical, right? Because once you deliver, you already need to be looking about the new things and the next things, and you need to be learning about what you have delivered and what comes next. So that's part of the continuous improvement, which has become this has become a loop now, right? It's not a linear process.
The starting point that we described there, right? So research and input and data and so on. What does good look like there? Because certainly in my experience, business is pretty good from a kind of volumetric data point of view. You know, we've got some data points that we collect internally, whether that's kind of demand, where customers are falling out of processes, you know, maybe where complaints have come in, and we can see, you know, data on that. From an external qualitative data standpoint, though, maybe less so. What's your experience at how good are businesses at like really robust research, and what does really robust research look like in your opinion?
So business are normally good at research that are starting or focusing on the business itself, right? And they are always also good at benchmarking, right? So looking, okay, this is where we want to get to. This is like some good inspiration for us to look at. But they're not always good at understanding that third element, or the first, and for me, which is people, right? So the first question that we normally make to a client, and sometimes we don't have a clear answer for that, is like who your customer is, right? Who are we talking about here? Have you spoken to your customer? How many interviews have you done in the past year? What's the kind of customer feedback that you get, right? Is just a standard NPS form, or do you actually go and talk to customers, right? And when you start shifting this mindset, right, I think it changes a lot, because then robust research starts getting, as you were saying, into the qualitative field, right, which is about sitting with your customers, which is about observing your customers. It's about seeing how they interact with the service that you're providing, and also understanding what are the different types of customers that are there, right? And then when you do that, you're going to start looking at what you're delivering from a different perspective, right? Which is from the perspective of the customers themselves, right? So one thing that we like to do in our map room projects is to start profiling customers. In design, we call this personas, right? And this is a concept that has evolved over time, and it's got to a point now where we can be very specific in terms of what are the different types of customers and what are their needs from our business, right? And it's the same as we were talking about before with colleagues, right? Because again, you have colleagues that have completely different profiles, roles, work environments, and that's something that we need to look at and understand if we want to provide good service, good experience, right?
It's quite the challenge though, isn't it? You know, you can see why businesses tend to do really well on the kind of volumetric, quantitative type data capture and so on. but actually designing your business and your own ways of working in such a way that allows you to take the time to really sit down in front of and have really detailed and quality conversations with a range of end users, end customers, and so on, even colleagues. You don't always, find the
And
time, right, to do that.
It's expensive as well, right?
It's so expensive, so time consuming, very subjective. There's a question about sample size and when do you have enough information to go, actually, there's noise around some certain things here that we want to pay attention to. So you can see why it would be easy to kind of sidestep that, but it is so powerful, isn't it, that information? And I guess you'd always encourage businesses to take that extra care and step.
Definitely, because sometimes if you only look at it from the business perspective, you cannot find the answer, right? Again, starting from the challenge, if you go through the path that you're used to, you might not get to, you're always getting to the same answer, right? But when you start from a different perspective and you start actually talking to people and looking at customers in a more qualitative way, you look at the problem in a different way, right? As I was describing. And the good thing is that now it's not as expensive as it was in the past.
Yes.
Of course, when you needed to interview customers and you needed to recruit customers and you needed to have a lot of investment in research to actually get good qualitative data, you would need to invest a lot. But with new tools, with AI, for instance, and with digital channels, this has become cheaper. Right, so business are doing this more and more, and there is more data that we can use to make this type of assessment.
Do you find from the projects that you've been involved with that is already in place, or are you also, as a service designer, playing a role in kind of encouraging them to take that stuff more seriously and put something in place there? Are you finding you're kind of starting with a blank canvas, or have you got some good stuff to work with?
Yeah, I think that we talked a few things about the role of service design, right? We talked about this facilitation role of like getting people to talk to each other in a company. We talked about this orchestration role of like trying to coordinate different parts of the business. Yeah. But there's also this last one, which is around communication and a bit of, in my perspective, in evangelization of looking at people and looking at the customer perspective. And that's something that, exactly as I'm doing the others, I'm also always doing in a project or in a client, because normally we see that people begin from little research, right? Sometimes you just have, as I was saying, for instance, what you're getting on your NPS survey, right? Right, that's already some data. Or you can look at what people are talking about you on social media. Yeah, there is some data there that we can use. But then, of course, you can take the next step and you can start talking to people and getting this kind of data. So yeah, it's always about evangelizing and proving the value of this type of research as well.
Excellent. Are there any kind of other, we talked about customer data, are there any other key kind of powerful ingredients for success that you would add to that list then, in terms of, the starting point for a project that's service design led?
Yeah, there are many, right? So any data point around people, business, and technology are very useful, right? And that's why discovery is always, as I was describing, right, very an opening phase, right? Because the more data we look at, being quantitative on the business and being qualitative, the better, right? So when you're looking at your customers, you can look at, for instance, analytical data that customers have on your website. Yeah. You can look at, as I was saying, how they are interacting with you on social media. You can actually go and talk to customers. You can run surveys. You have many touch points that you can collect data from. And it's the same with business. It's the same with technology. The hardest part is what you do with all this data afterwards, right? Exactly. How you converge that to then a definition and the problem that you're actually going to solve.
And other things, I guess, like your kind of as-is journey and all that associated research kind of hanging from the right journey, so you can kind of, again, converge and start to identify what are the big hitters here, what are the big opportunities that we might be able to, see some, improvement from. Another one for us is, you see on our website, on MapRoom's website, we the first phrase on there is outcome obsessed. And I think in order to be outcome obsessed, you've got to have those conversations with the customer up front. And often it does start in the sale of what we do, when we're having those conversations. But quite often, customers find it hard to define what are the measures of success for this, problem or this thing that we're trying to address. And that's where the kind of opening up phase can help as well. Because I know in some of the projects we've been working on recently, a good first step is to go, well, what is the vision? What is the vision for this? What is it that we're trying to solve for? And fundamentally along the way, how will we know that we're getting there unless we describe that some measures of success as well, some OKRs and so on.
Yeah.
So that's often a place, I think, where, customers love this idea that as a business we can go, well, what's the outcome we want to create here? And you hold us to account on that, and let's work on it together. But it means that they've done some level of kind of diagnostic discovery to understand, well, what are these kind of outcomes that we want to achieve? And obviously that's sometimes a really great first step. We've talked about current state journeys, kind of customer pain points, all the types of data that we could collect there as well. Is there anything around kind of brand and culture as well that you would feed into that as a kind of input into service design?
Yeah, I think it's just wanted to go back to one of the things you were mentioning, right? Because all of these are artifacts that we use to exactly synthesize the discovery, right? In such a complex world where you are collecting data from, different sources. Now with AI, this has been even expanded, right? You can collect data from a lot of different sources, right? So it's important to synthesize and define what, as you're saying, what your goals are and what your experience is. And some of the artifacts we are using in MapRoom are exactly in that direction, right? So first of all, trying and understanding what is your vision and what are the objectives of the business for the problem we're looking at, right? So vision, objectives, key results, these are things that we are working with the business to get there and to align this internally as well. And then artifacts that we use to condense customer research or research with colleagues, right? So sometimes we go and we interview 50 plus people in a business, right? How do we make all of that data into something that is easy to access and clear, right?
Yeah.
And then we, as I was saying, we can create personas, right? We can get to profiles that will represent who your customers are and will make it easier for all the teams to align around. As you were saying as well, the journey, right? We can look at what is the journey of your customer, your employee, with your business, and identify what's working, what's not working there, so we have clear points of improvement.
Yeah.
And then from there we can start bringing the vision to that experience.
Yeah.
Right. And then when you were talking about, you just mentioned at the end, right, culture, and what was the other thing?
I guess brand and culture.
Brand
right?
and culture,
what does this business want to be kind of known for as a brand? Like, what's their tone of voice? How do they want to attract the right customers, the right colleagues, and so on?
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be a helpful input, right? So that you can build maybe some design principles around it and so on.
Yeah, exactly. So this is one of the inputs and one of the outputs of the work as well, right?
Yeah.
When you talk about brand and culture, these needs to be underlaying everything you do and everything that a company is delivering to its employees and its customers. So it's always an input for us, right? But it's also, we need to always be concerned with how the outputs are influencing brand or influencing culture. So as you were saying, the tone of voice can be one, but then we can discuss with the business and understand that we can shift this or change. And communications and how we communicate is part of the service design outputs.
Yeah. Brilliant. So I guess to underscore that, research, insight-led, all of those inputs make for a kind of really robust kind of discovery, and then converging on what is the thing that we're going to start to work on here and hope to change in order to achieve some of the, the OKRs that maybe we've defined up front. I want to try and bring it to life, and I wonder if we can maybe touch on two examples. We won't get into kind of company specifics, but let's start with maybe a customer journey. What's kind of maybe the project that you're most proud of, and could you bring it to life for us? Like, what was the starting point, the problem, and what approach did you take? And what was the outcome?
Yes. So one of the things that I like the most about what I do, right? When you talk about projects that you're proud of, one of the things that I like the most is the fact that as service design is a generalist discipline that is looking at different sectors and different business. I'm always learning a lot about completely new worlds, right? So I have worked with the aircraft industry, for instance, looking at aircraft maintenance. I have worked with, the beauty or the makeup industry, right? Looking at, how a specific makeup product would work or could be sold or not. And recently, working with MapRoom, we got into the utility business and at different sectors, of course, in the utility business, one of them being waste management, which is a whole new world, which is really also an interesting one to look at. So I was there needing to learn a lot about this how it works in the UK. What are the different customers that assess this type of service? And sorry, what was the question again? I got lost.
So tell me about a customer-led kind of customer journey, service design-led piece of work. Maybe the one that you're most proud of. Kind of break it down for us. What was the problem, the approach you took, and maybe a little bit about the outcome.
Yeah. Should I start over or
go for it? Yeah.
So. Yeah, in working with MapRoom, there are a few projects that I have worked recently with. We recently have been working a lot with the utilities sector, and we had a recent project with waste management. It's always interesting for me how with every new client, you need to learn about a new world. And I'm a very curious person. That's maybe why I got into this field. But it was very interesting to learn about waste management challenges, right? Which go around sustainability is such a crucial business sector in today's world, right? When we look at sustainability, when we look at how this also connects and integrates with public services, right? How it integrates with businesses and small businesses. So one challenge that this company that we worked with had, it was very much around understanding this scenario of this world of different customers, right? From public sector to small businesses to huge businesses who have their own waste challenges. So the first thing we did for them was to basically sit with them and understand who your customers are, right? And how we can then break this down into the personas that are within each of these businesses, right? So I think that the first challenge we had with them was to help them then map and understand who their customers are. And as we were saying, to a qualitative level, right? Not only in terms of numbers and share in the business, but also what are their motivations, right? When we look, for instance, at a sustainability manager in a big business, what are the things that they are concerned about, right? Why are they coming to us? So that was a very good start of this project of mapping and doing research with them and understanding who the customers were, right? Where we could start from.
And then was that like kind of segmentation? What are kind of the the high level categories or kind of buckets of customers and divided by the fact that their needs and desires and expectations are going to be quite different. So that was your starting point. Who are these customers and how might we segment them so we can better treat them and think about their needs?
And the segmentation can come from the business, right?
Yeah.
That was the case with them. They had a very clear segmentation for their customers. What they didn't have yet was, if we look at each of these segments, who are actually the people that are under these
next
segments?
layer of detail.
Right? Who, if we look at, let's say, a corporate level, right? Who are the professionals that we are dealing with? As I was talking about, right? You can have a sustainability manager. You can have someone who's like in the operations, right? Dealing with waste directly, right? What are the different touch points that they have with each segmentation, right? So that was
a key starting point. What happened next then? Where did you go from there?
Right. So the next step was then to help them identifying, knowing who were the people that we were talking to, how we were talking to them, right? Or what was our relationship with them, right? And then it was basically us mapping what this journey is, right? From the moment that people find out that they have a need around waste, up to the moment in which they through the moment in which they need to hire a company for their waste management, up to the moment in which they would need to leave or upgrade, right? So mapping the whole journey of a customer and of the different customers as well with them, and then trying to identify based on that, where were the points for improvement, right? So this company was going or is going through a big transformation process, as we're seeing with probably all clients now, right? All companies are going through some transformation level at the moment, and this is a work that helped them then base that transformation on, to start the transformation from looking at what are the problems that we have in different parts of the journey, and from these problems, what are then the solutions that we can start to look at, right? And of course, it's not something that we are just proposing. This is something that we are working with them and collaborating and co-designing with them to get to the solutions that need to be created, right? Looking at the research, this is your customer, these are the problems. How can we solve for these problems? Let's prioritize and let's solve for these problems together. And from there, we get to what we call a solutions catalog, right? Which is a list of initiatives that need to be part of your transformation. Some of these are more important, some of these are less, and they always go back to objectives and results, right? Which ones have more impact, which ones have less impact, and then we work with them to build a roadmap. Right. So that's looking from the service design perspective. That's one of the last deliverables or artifacts, right? Which is, now we need to have a clear map of all the initiatives we talked about, based on our plan for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, right? How we are managing transformation.
Sure. So you've kind of gone from that opening stage of, right, this business wants to transform, it wants to improve, it wants to, provide a better experience for their customers. You've figured out, well, who are these customers? You've gone and done the research, you've broken it down, you've gone to that next layer, you've looked across the current customer journey, and you said, where's this not working? You've asked your customers, where is this not working, and so on. What are their expectations? Maybe what some of your competitors are doing that you're not. You've then figured out, right, you've converged, you've figured out, well, what are the opportunities here? How do we translate those into a various different kind of initiatives and solutions, whether that be policy changes, process changes, back of stage, whether it be digital channels and all the rest of it. And then you've built that roadmap and you've started to sequence it based on priority, based on the ones that are going to have the biggest impact, aligned to those OKRs, those goals that you've set, and you're away. And that forms essentially your kind of roadmap for transformation. So that's a kind of customer example. One of the things we often talk about at Maproom is your colleagues are your customers as well. And we've already touched on it a little bit, but let's flip it now and talk to us about how service design can be applied to a colleague journey context. And I know there's a specific example maybe we can touch on as well.
Yeah. Well, right now we're working on a project which relates to colleague experience, or as I like to call it, employee experience, right? We're looking at a specific part of that employee journey, which is learning, which is always a big challenge for companies, right? How to deliver learning in a way that supports business performance and that supports people development at the same time. And the way we looked at this is not very different from the way we look at customer experience projects, right? As we were saying, employees, colleagues are your customers. So the process is very much similar. The difference is that when we're talking to colleagues, we have more access, right?
Yes.
So we are able to talk to the different business areas and understand what's working, what's not working for them. We can bring people in a room to co-create and co-design more easily than we do with customers. And that's, I think, a big advantage, right? In terms of process and outputs, they're very much similar to a customer experience project. So we are also looking at personas. So we're looking at, well, you have employees that are working in the frontline operation. You have employees in the back office who are part, for instance, of the technology or the finance team. You have engineers who are very highly technical roles. And these are all people with very different learning motivations, very different learning needs, and sometimes even different learning styles, right? So again, it's very important to start and understand who your customers, or in this case, who your colleagues are, and the relationship with, in this case, learning, right? And from there, it's very much the same process, right? Mapping their experience with learning from the moment they are hired up to the moment that they leave the company. What's happening there? What are the pain points in that experience? What is working well for them that we need to keep doing? And this will give us all the opportunities and the pain points that we need to then solutionize for and build solutions catalog, a roadmap, exactly as we would do with customers.
I think, again, some of the other customers we've worked with in this space, these are, again, big brand names, household name companies that they have a certain pull factor for, for potential employees who, people who want to join that business because of the name, because of the brand and so on. But more often than not, the pull factor's there, but then the moment someone lands, what's the reality is often then a question that they ask, and some of the stakeholders we've worked with say, I'm not sure we're giving the experience that they assume will be the case based on our brand name, our size and scale and all the rest of it. And that is a great example of a company who's going, do you know what, we want to do the right thing by the employee, giving them a great experience from a learning point of view. But the win is that it's two ways. It's good for them. They get to develop. They get to go on a path. They get to help the business improve. And of course, the flip to that is the business gets the absolute best out of their people as well. It's where are we up to with that project now then? So you're still in that service design phase?
Yeah, we're very much in between discovery and definition and development, right? So right now, this very week, right, we are running ideation workshops with their teams, right, with the learning teams, and also some SMEs across the business to help us then ideate on possible solutions, right? So we're putting colleague personas and journeys in front of them and looking at what's working and what's not working, and then working with them to deliver ideas and solutions on how we can improve things, right? So it's a fun part of the project because it's very creative, and it's also very much about envisioning what good looks like, exactly. And it's normally quite engaging, right? The next part is going to be, now let's get back to reality and see how we can make this happening. What are the steps, right?
How do you kind of unlock that? Because not everyone's a creative, not everyone's you, not everyone's done kind of the beauty industry, the aerospace industry, utilities and all the rest of it. How do you, as a facilitator, unlock that? It's almost like pulling the reins off your employees, right? Those who've so used to the way that this business works. Oh, we could never do that shiny, beautiful journey, that visionary journey that maybe another company does because there's too many constraints and so on. How do you take the reins off? How do you get them to think creatively?
Yeah, but I would argue that, in fact, we are all creatives, right? But sometimes we're just in a box, or we're just, not able to see beyond what our current role is. And part of what we do with these sessions, right, is also trying to put them in a different mindset, right? Which is more a mindset of blue sky thinking of, well, let's think of what good looks like, right?
Yeah.
And it's always helpful to start from no constraints, right? What would be the ideal experience? What would you envision as the ideal experience, right? Let's start from there. And then you can get people to, you have templates that you can use, right? And you can get people to start sketching ideas, for instance. You can get people to start combining different themes that they would normally not do in their natural work environment. And from there, new ideas can flourish, right?
Yeah.
So, well, there are different techniques, right? But I think it's all about mindset. The mindset you get people in, I'm always impressed by how people can really get creative, even very technical roles.
Yeah.
When you put them in an environment where they can be creative, you will always be impressed with the.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? You give them permission, you give them space, time to think creatively. Again, often removing them from maybe literally the space that they operate in day to day, bringing them together with, again, different mindsets, different roles, different perspectives. Yourself as a facilitator who comes with tools, techniques, things to get them to open up.
And there are different techniques. There is one which I haven't used in this project, but there's one which involves Lego playing, right? So people just have Lego pieces on the table and they need to work on the solutions by building stuff, working with their hands. So there are different techniques.
So we talked about customers as, the end customer as the customer. We talked about colleagues as the customer as well. There are a few stats out there. And again, kind of this idea of service design led improvement, agile improvement, journey management rather than journey mapping. It lends itself to a world where businesses, again, I said up front, take this really seriously and maybe adopt a new type of operating model. So again, we talked about, rather than improvement being seen as, we have a problem, we're going to try and address it, we're going to run some change, that's the end of it, and then maybe a problem will appear in the future, we'll do another one-off project. But adopting a new operating model where you reorganize your business around key journeys, again, whether customer or colleague, that's quite the step, isn't it?
Yeah.
But again, based on what you were saying about where we are today and how fast-paced technology is, the environment is, and problems appear, and customers always looking for a better deal, always looking for a better experience, always looking for a business that maybe says something about them and that they want to join and be part of, and that says something about their identity. That step from traditional one-off change moving to a continuous improvement-led change, insight-led change, but permanently, it's quite the jump, isn't it? But we certainly know those customers who are starting to adopt that, they see huge benefits. And I think one of the most quoted benefits, I'm sure I wrote it down here, that customers, businesses who adopt a service design led, customer journey management led, they orient their target, their operating model around journeys. They see massive improvements, 10 to 15% improvement in kind of revenue generation, 10 to 15%, maybe slightly more from a cost saving point of view. How can you kind of what's the way that we might convince businesses that this stuff is the way that we should be doing change rather than that traditional approach?
Yeah, I think you're talking about something that makes a lot of sense, right? In the terms of business, normally when they don't use this approach, they are normally reacting to stuff, right? So it's a very reactive way
Yeah.
of dealing with challenges, right? And when you start looking at journeys, when you start better understanding what you are offering and how you can improve things and how you can start continuously optimizing it, you're shifting from a more reactive mindset to a more proactive mindset.
Yeah.
Right. And only by changing that, right, with the tools to do that, brings a lot of benefits.
Yeah.
Right, because then you're not waiting for something to happen to act on it. You're actually you're starting the conversation, and you're providing the starting point. And then there are other steps you can take, right? Because once you start collecting data, for instance, in the right way, when you map your journey and you start collecting data associated to that, right? When you're managing your journey, you're able to collect data in a way that will allow you to go one step beyond and be predictive, right? So you're not only being proactive about your customer, you're also predicting what's going to happen based on the data that you're collecting.
Sure.
Right. And this gets us in other directions. So when we talk about AI, for instance, right, for businesses to use AI at its best, right, they need to have this base, right? They need to start from understanding where they're collecting their data from and what they're doing with their data. And it all starts with understanding what the journey is, understanding what the touch points are and what data is being collected.
Yeah.
Right.
So AI could play that role, or certainly assist in that role of raw kind of continuous data collection, raw inputs, but then help to synthesize, help to pull out some of the key insights and that kind of. Is that where you see AI playing its role? Is that its best use case in this scenario?
Yeah. Well, we can talk about now and we can talk about a few years from now, right?
Yeah.
And a few years from now, the way I see it, it's that it will be able to run some of the operations autonomously, right?
Yeah.
So we already have agents now that are supporting businesses in many ways. And once you have this base, once you know what data you're collecting, right, what insights are leading to what decisions, this will make it easier for things to be very automated, right? So right now, we are in that stage of automating how we get insights and improving decision making, right, with less effort. But we'll get to a stage in which things will be totally automated, right? But it's just you need to build the base to get there, right?
Yeah.
And well, part of what we're doing is exactly in that direction.
Yeah. It starts with that really good, solid data foundation, I guess, doesn't it? Like, how do you personally feel about the direction of travel with AI? What's your kind of thoughts on it?
Yeah, I see. And we can talk about service design specifically.
Yeah.
Right? Because the way I see it, and I do like Microsoft's name for its AI, which is Copilot. I think it's a very good analogy of the help you can get from AI today, right? And it's already helping us be much more efficient in our day-to-day work. And new solutions are coming every day, such as agents, etc. So right now, it's making our work more efficient, but in the near future, we're going to be working in partnership with AI, right? So, for instance, if we look at service design, you can have AI doing the recruitment for you, or even running some interviews for you, right? Or even collecting the data for you. And you need to know how to coordinate that. And I see the role of a service designer. We talked about orchestration, we talked about facilitation, communication, and there is this with AI. There is this element of curation as well, right? So I think service designers will become more and more curators of what the AI is bringing, right? Because as a generalist, understanding the business, the journey, you will be able to exactly filter what's coming from the different agents.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's ever evolving, and it's a tool, right, that we need to use in our advantage.
Yeah, I can imagine it's coming up a lot in some of your ideation space kind of workshops, maybe in some of your discovery work as well, right?
Yeah. It's right now people are at that moment where they realize big changes are coming. They're kind of getting used to that, but this people realizing that big changes are coming, and yeah, I think people are still a bit lost in terms of how to prepare for it, right?
Yeah.
Because especially in the workspace, right?
Yeah.
There are going to be changes soon, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it's hard to predict as well, right? The only thing you need to know is that you need to be ready to adapt,
Sure.
right? So, and that's the thing. What some of our work and some of the outputs of our work is helping business do.
Yeah. I've loved going into detail about this today. I wondered if we could finish with something, and if you could kind of sum up why you love what you do, and perhaps why more companies should adopt this type of approach, how would you put it?
Yeah, I think there are two parts for this question, right? Why I love what I do is because, as I was saying, I've always been a curious mind. And when you work as a service designer, you're always exploring and discovering new worlds, right? As I was saying, you can go from aircraft engineering to waste management and to beauty and, to all sorts of industry that need this approach and this kind of thinking.
Yeah.
Right. And I also like it when bringing it to the client perspective, right, of what people needed. One of the things I like the most about what I do as well is when I put people, two people in the same room, two people who work together, work in the same company, but they normally don't communicate much or work in isolation. And when you see just a discussion happening between those two people and the type of ideas or the type of things that they can produce just by sitting in the same room, discussing, using some of the prompts we produce, that's really it's beneficial, right? And it's rewarding for me as well to see sometimes how we help companies breaking these silos and finding new ways and new approaches just by sitting together, talking. And of course, we offer them the platform to do that.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. I think for me, one of the most powerful things is exactly that. You give a business the space to think things through, to step back from the day-to-day of the operation and the day-to-day of the pains that fall at their feet every single day, right? And you give them the space to, as you said, blue sky thinking, give them the space to think about what could this look like in 2 or 3 years from now if we really, orchestrated ourselves in the right way. And then from a tools and techniques and a collaboration point of view, you get to help them and direct them in the right way. So it's not about trying to solve everything. We can't possibly solve everything. Which are the bits that are really going to add some value? If we do this discovery right, if we learn enough about our customers, our colleagues, what are the few changes that we could make that could have a massive improvement, a massive benefit to our customers from an experience point of view? It can make our colleagues much happier, and we could see some really good business outcomes as well. That's the thing I love about it. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
I've loved talking to you about this. Thanks for all your hard work as well on all the programs that we're running. We'll sit down again in the future, but thank you.
Cheers. Good to be here.